What if I told you that a quiet night on patrol in a small American town turned into a secret I carried for the rest of my life? I wasn't the kind of man who chased ghost stories, and I never thought I'd be the one telling this. But it happened, and once you hear it, you won't look at the sky the same way again. It was late summer, the kind of night where the air feels thick and the world seems slower than usual. I was driving along a lonely stretch of highway just outside of town, checking the usual spots where kids sometimes parked to sneak a drink or couples came to be alone. Nothing ever really happened on those roads, and that's exactly why I noticed the light. It wasn't a car, wasn't a plane, wasn't anything that belonged in the night sky. At first, it was just a shimmer, like heat rising off asphalt. Then it flared, white, silver, blue all at once, and blinked out before I could even process what I had seen. I slowed my cruiser, pulled to the shoulder, and stepped out into the stillness. Crickets, frogs, the buzz of power lines, that's all I heard. The air smelled of ozone, sharp and electric, like the moment before lightning cracks. I told myself it was just some kind of atmospheric thing, maybe a plane reflecting moonlight, but deep down I knew it wasn't. 10 minutes later, I got the call. Dispatch asked if I could check on a report of strange activity near an abandoned farmhouse 2 miles east. Strange activity in my line of work usually meant teenagers breaking windows or squatters making noise, but my gut tightened. The voice of the caller had been shaky, almost frightened, and though dispatch didn't say much, I could tell they were rattled too. The farmhouse had been empty for years. Locals said it was haunted, which meant kids used it for dares. When I pulled up the dirt road, the place looked like it always had: dark, sagging roof, weeds up to my knees. But the air was different. A faint glow leaked from the barn behind the house, a pale pulse that looked alive somehow. I walked closer, slow, careful, my boots crunching gravel. The glow grew brighter, and that smell of ozone returned, sharper now, biting at my lungs. My flashlight beam cut through the dark as I reached the barn door, but I didn't need it anymore. The light inside was so strong it washed out everything else. For a moment, I thought maybe there was some kind of illegal generator inside, maybe chemicals, but then I heard it. Not a sound like any machine I'd ever known. It was layered, like whispers stacked on top of each other, too many voices speaking too fast to follow. My hand froze on the barn door. The air around me vibrated like a plucked wire, and the ground seemed to hum under my feet. I pushed the door open. Inside, my world stopped. Hovering a few feet off the ground was a craft. Not a plane, not a helicopter, not anything built by us. It was smooth, seamless, shaped like an oval with no markings or seams, glowing from within as though it were alive. Around it, the air shimmered the same way I'd seen above the highway, like reality itself was bending. And then I saw them. Two figures, small and thin, almost fragile-looking, their skin pale with a faint shimmer that caught the light. Their eyes were large, black pools that seemed to hold more than just sight. They seemed to hold thought. For a second, they looked at me the way you might look at a wild animal, cautious, unsure, but not hostile. I should have been afraid, maybe even run, but I couldn't move. Every instinct screamed that I wasn't supposed to be here, that I was witnessing something meant to stay hidden. Then one of them stepped forward. No words came from its mouth, but I heard it inside me. A thought that wasn't mine, clear as my own voice. We don't want trouble. We are running. Running. The word echoed in my mind, heavy with meaning. Running from what? From who? My breath came fast, and I wanted to ask questions, but my voice stuck in my throat. The second being looked toward the craft, then back at me. Its gaze was almost pleading. I felt a rush of images, stars, fire, darkness, something chasing them through endless black. It was overwhelming, like my mind couldn't hold it all. My knees weakened, and I grabbed the barn wall to steady myself. The first one raised a hand, not in warning, but in what felt like reassurance. Please, the voice in my head whispered, do not call others. They knew who I was. They knew the uniform, the radio on my chest, the authority I carried. They were asking me to stay silent, to break every rule of the badge I wore. And yet, in that moment, it didn't feel like a choice. I nodded, slowly, unsure why, but certain it was the only thing I could do. The being seemed to relax. The glow around the craft pulsed brighter, and the whispering sound grew louder, vibrating in my chest. I stepped back instinctively, shielding my eyes as the light consumed the barn. Then, just like before, it was gone. The barn stood empty, silent, nothing but dust and the smell of ozone lingering in the air. I staggered outside, my mind spinning. The night looked normal again, the stars sharp and endless above me. But I knew everything had changed, and that was only the beginning. I sat in my cruiser for nearly half an hour outside that barn, hands gripping the steering wheel so tight they hurt, trying to convince myself that what I saw was real and not the product of exhaustion or imagination. But the smell of ozone still clung to my clothes, and the vibration in my bones hadn't faded. My radio crackled once, dispatch asking for a status update on the farmhouse call. My thumb hovered over the mic, but I couldn't bring myself to speak. What could I possibly say? That I had just spoken, no, thought, with beings from another world who asked me to keep them hidden? If I told the truth, they'd think I'd lost my mind. If I lied, I'd have to explain the silence and the time I had spent there. So I pressed the button and said simply, "Nothing here. Must have been kids." All clear. My voice was steady, but inside I was trembling. The drive back into town felt endless. Every shadow looked alive. Every passing car seemed like it might stop me and demand answers. But no one did. The streets were quiet, as they always were at that hour, and I made it through the rest of my shift without another call. Still, I couldn't sleep when I got home. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying the images that had burned into my mind. Stars scattered across a black ocean, fire swallowing a world I didn't know, the desperate gaze of beings who were running from something even worse. Days passed, and I tried to bury it. I went on with my patrols, filled out my reports, nodded along when people talked about mundane things. But at night, when the sky was clear, I found myself pulling over on back roads and just staring upward, searching for a shimmer, a pulse of light, a sign that they were still out there. 2 weeks later, I got another call. Same area, same farmhouse. This time the report was stranger, bright lights in the sky, moving in patterns no plane could make. My chest tightened when dispatch relayed the message. I tried to sound casual as I responded, but inside I knew. They had come back, or maybe they had never left. The farmhouse looked deserted when I arrived, but the air told a different story. That charge was there again, faint but unmistakable, as if the atmosphere itself remembered what had passed through. I parked farther down the road this time and approached on foot. My pulse thundered in my ears, and I kept reminding myself, they weren't hostile. They had asked for help, for silence, for trust, and I had given it. I owed it to them to keep walking. The barn was darker now, no glow spilling from the cracks, no hum. But when I stepped inside, I felt it again. The pull, the shift in reality that made the air seem thicker. In the corner, half in shadow, I saw a movement. At first, I thought it was an animal, but then the figure stepped into the light. One of them, the same one who had spoken in my mind before. Its eyes fixed on me, wide and knowing. And again, without words, I heard it. "We are still hunted." Images rushed me again, stronger this time. I staggered, clutching my head as visions poured in. A massive, dark ship chasing them across the stars, worlds scorched and abandoned, the fear of being caught. I gasped for air as the weight of their fear pressed against my chest. Why me? I thought. Or maybe I whispered it, I don't know. The answer was immediate. Because you listened. Simple as that. Out of all the people they could have been seen by, all the ones who might have called for reinforcements or turned them in, I had chosen silence. And that silence made me their only safe place. The second being appeared behind the first, its movements slower, more strained, as if something was wrong. It leaned heavily against the barn wall, its body trembling faintly. Panic surged through me. Were they injured? Sick? Did they need something I couldn't give? The first one reached toward me, and I felt the plea before I even understood it. Help. My breath caught. Help? How? I was just a man in a small town, bound by rules and limits. But when I looked at the fragile figure struggling to stand, When I felt the weight of their desperation pressing into my mind, I knew I couldn't turn away. I stepped forward, and in that moment, something passed between us. Not just thoughts, but a current of trust, fragile and immense. They had nowhere else to go. And somehow, impossibly, I was the one who had to decide what came next. The moment I reached out to steady the smaller one, its skin felt cool beneath my hand, almost like touching smooth stone warmed by moonlight. Yet there was a faint vibration, as if its body carried the same hum I had felt in the air around the craft. Its large eyes met mine, and again I felt a rush of thoughts, not words but impressions, pain, fatigue, the strain of a long escape. I wanted to ask questions, to know everything, but the look in its eyes told me that time was short. The first being, the one who seemed stronger, moved closer and placed a hand gently over mine. Not safe here. The thought pressed into my skull. They search. Always. My heart pounded. Who? I managed to whisper. For a moment, the images came, shadows in space, vast black ships that blotted out stars, a sense of relentless pursuit. But the word that settled in my mind was chilling. Hunters. I swallowed hard. Whatever these beings were running from, it wasn't human. Something else was out there, something powerful enough to terrify a species that had crossed the stars. I glanced around the barn, wondering how long before someone else reported strange lights, how long before my presence here drew attention. The smaller being swayed, almost collapsing, and instinct took over. I slipped an arm around it, steadying it as best I could. It weighed almost nothing, lighter than it should have been, as if its body wasn't bound to the same rules of gravity as mine. Its companion gave me a look, half gratitude, half warning, and then another thought filled my mind. We cannot heal here. We need time. My throat was dry. Time for what? But they didn't answer directly. Instead, I saw flashes of them repairing their craft, of hiding in places dark and forgotten, of slipping away before anyone knew they had been there. They were fugitives, not invaders. Survivors, not conquerors. And they had chosen to trust me. A noise outside snapped me out of the moment. Gravel crunching. Tires on the road. My pulse jumped. No one should be here. I stepped back from the beings and peered through the crack in the barn wall. A pickup truck had pulled onto the dirt road, headlights cutting through the night. Two men got out, local farmhands by the look of them, and I cursed under my breath. They must have seen something in the sky, or maybe they were just curious about lights at the old farmhouse. Either way, they were heading straight for us. I turned back to the beings, panic rising. You have to hide, I whispered, though I knew they didn't need the words to understand. The stronger one nodded, and with a faint shimmer, their bodies seemed to blur, almost melting into the shadows. If I hadn't known they were there, I would have thought the barn empty. The door creaked as the men pushed it open. Flashlights swept across the dust, landing on me. Officer, what are you doing out here? One of them asked, suspicion in his voice. My mind raced. Got a report of trespassers, I said, forcing calm into my tone. Checking it out. Barn's empty. Probably just kids fooling around. The men exchanged a glance. One muttered something about lights in the sky, but I shook my head. Planes. Air Force runs training around here sometimes. It wasn't a great lie, but it was the best I had. After a moment, they seemed to buy it, or at least didn't want to argue. They poked around the barn half-heartedly, grumbled about wasting gas, and eventually left, their truck rumbling back down the road until the night swallowed the sound. I exhaled slowly, realizing only then how tightly my fists were clenched. When I turned back, the beings had emerged again, their forms stabilizing in the dim glow of the barn. The smaller one leaned heavily against its companion, but its eyes never left me. You protect, came the thought, faint but filled with something like relief. I shook my head, more to myself than to them. Protect? I was just one man, a small-town officer with no power beyond the county line. Yet somehow, impossibly, I had become their shield. The stronger one moved closer, so close I could feel the air shift around it. If you choose, the thought came, heavy and deliberate. We can trust you. My chest tightened. The weight of the decision pressed down on me. If I said yes, I would be complicit in hiding them. in keeping the greatest discovery in human history secret. If I said no, they would be exposed, hunted, maybe captured, maybe worse. I opened my mouth, but no sound came. Then I realized I didn't need to speak. They were already inside my thoughts. And in that silent space, I gave my answer. The moment I gave them my silent answer, the barn seemed to breathe. The hum in the air deepened, the ozone scent sharpened, and for a heartbeat, I felt as though the ground itself had shifted beneath me. The stronger one lowered its head slightly, almost like a bow, while the smaller one straightened, finding some strength in my decision. A wave of gratitude washed over me, not my own, but theirs, like warm light filling the cracks of fear. I didn't realize until then how much they had been holding back, how heavy their desperation truly was. We must leave soon. The thought came, steady but tinged with urgency. Our hunters draw close. My stomach nodded. I wanted to ask 100 questions: where they came from, what the hunters were, why they had chosen Earth of all places, but time was slipping away. The craft appeared again with a shimmer, materializing in the center of the barn as if space had folded to let it through. Its surface glowed faintly, and lines of light pulsed along its hull like veins carrying life. I stepped closer, almost involuntarily, drawn to it. It wasn't just a machine. It felt alive, like part of them. The smaller being pressed its palm to the craft's surface, and in that instant I saw flashes of stars, nebulae, entire systems they had traveled through. I saw the vast emptiness of space, both beautiful and terrifying, and I felt their longing, not just for safety, but for belonging, for a place where they would not be hunted. My chest tightened with something I couldn't name. The stronger one turned its gaze back to me. "You kept us safe," it pressed into my mind. "Few would have done so. For this, we owe you." My throat closed. "I didn't do anything," I whispered, though even I knew it wasn't true. Silence is a choice. Trust is a choice. And I had made both. The air vibrated again as the craft pulsed brighter. The smaller one stepped toward me, raising a trembling hand. For a moment, I thought it meant to say goodbye, but when its fingers touched my forehead, the world exploded. Images, sounds, emotions poured into me all at once. I saw their homeworld, oceans glowing under twin moons, cities that rose like crystal towers, laughter and music that weren't human but still familiar. Then I saw fire, hunters descending, tearing everything apart, leaving nothing but ruins and silence. The pain was unbearable, but layered within it was something else: knowledge. Fragments of their science, their history, their warnings. Seeds planted in my mind, too vast to grasp all at once, but there, waiting. When the connection broke, I staggered, gasping. My knees nearly buckled, but the stronger one caught me with surprising gentleness. "Now you know," its thought whispered. "Now you carry part of us." My vision blurred as tears stung my eyes. Why me? The answer was simple, and it struck deeper than anything else that night. Because you listened. The craft's glow intensified, filling the barn with blinding light. The beings moved toward it, their forms blending with the shimmer until they were part of the vessel itself. I shielded my eyes as the hum rose into a roar, and then, in a final pulse of brilliance, they were gone. The barn stood empty once again, silent except for the echo of my own ragged breathing. I stumbled outside into the cool night, stars stretching endlessly overhead. The world looked the same. Crickets still sang. The highway still hummed faintly in the distance, but everything inside me had changed. For days after, I wandered through life in a haze. People laughed, complained, argued about bills or weather, while I carried the weight of something none of them could imagine. I wrote no report. I told no one. And yet, the memory burned brighter than any truth I had ever known. Sometimes, late at night, when the sky is clear and the air carries that faint electric taste, I swear I see it again. A shimmer at the edge of vision, a pulse of light that vanishes when I blink. Each time, I wonder if it's them, checking back, making sure I kept my word. And I did. I always did. Because here's the truth: they weren't here to conquer us. They weren't here to save us either. They were just running, just trying to survive. And on one lonely night in a forgotten barn, I became the only witness to their flight. That secret has lived with me ever since. And now, it lives with you.